Hello and welcome to Beyond Boundaries. I'm your host, Justin Douglas. Thanks so much for joining me for this episode. You can find the show notes on pastorjustindouglas.com. You can support the show at our Patreon page. The link is in the podcast description and in the show notes. I got a chance to interview Graham Desert. Graham has accomplished something amazing. I won't give it away though, but we get into it on this episode. I think this episode is incredibly inspiring, even challenging, and just all around a good shot in the arm for any of us feeling like we are struggling to reach our goals or even set big goals for ourselves. It's an amazing episode. I really enjoyed it. I think you're going to enjoy it. Here it is, my conversation with Graham Desert. Well, Graham, welcome to the podcast. I'm here with Graham Desert, and we are going to talk about one of the interesting things you've done recently. But before giving away what that is, why don't you introduce people to who you are, what you're about, give them a little glimpse overview of just who you are. And then I want to get into this challenge thing that you did that I think is pretty amazing. So give people an introduction into who you are.
Awesome, man. Well, I'm glad to be here. I'm honored. So I'm Graham Desert. I grew up in a large military family of 10 children. My mom and dad, we would pack up and move every 2 to 3 years. So most of that time I grew up in Kansas City. That's where I met my wife. That's where I started my family. That's where I started my business. And then recently, within the last few years, my wife and I actually moved to Carlsbad, California, which is where we currently reside. We've been here for about 4 years. Absolutely love it here. Love the West Coast. There's some things we don't like about the West Coast, but I would say 99% of it we absolutely love. We love this area. We love the community that we're in. Things that I like, things about me. I love challenges. I love being physically active. I love music. I'm a vocalist and a musician myself. My wife is the same. I have 5 children myself, and a recent grandpa. My oldest daughter delivered our first grandchild at the end of January.
Congrats. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I'm super excited about that. It's been an absolute amazing and blessing to our family. So, I love physical challenges. That I would say that's just something I really enjoy doing. It kind of speaks to my heart.
That's amazing. Okay. So I got to tell you before we get into this, I heard your story, or I saw like a clip about it, and I was like, that is crazy. So last year around January, I was at my gym and I started doing Murph every Sunday, just once a week. Every Sunday I would do Murph, and I'm a pastor, so I would preach on Sunday morning. Then I would go to the gym in the afternoon and I would do Murph every single Sunday. And then my friend Alex started joining me, and we do it together on Sundays, and we were partitioning it different. We were doing it different. It was just kind of like, we'll do this. And then for us, lockdown happened with coronavirus, and we had been doing it every Sunday. And we said, and he was like, what do you think do you think we could do it for 30 days? And so we started like this 30-day challenge to do it for 30 days. And I got 9 days into it. And the reason I quit was because it required so much time. And for me, I'm a father as well. I have 3 kids. And life was just very interesting in ministry with the challenges of going all digital. There's a lot of excuses. Okay. But at the same time, 9 days was about what I got. And he got all 30. And I thought, man alive, that's pretty impressive. You did a whole year of Murphs.
An entire year.
Every day and for those who don't know what Murph is, you run a mile. You do 100 pull-ups, you do 200 push-ups, you do 300 air squats, and another mile, and you do it all in a 20-pound vest. Did you do a 20-pound vest every time you did it?
Every time.
Oh my gosh. So what made you want to do this? Because for me and him, it was more like, we're bored. This will be fun. This will be a challenge. We both rode a marathon in the middle. Together, we rode a marathon. Like, we like the challenges. And I sense that you're the type of guy, like when me and Alex talk, we always talk about crazy ideas like, how long could we run a mile every hour or something, like every hour on the hour? How long could we sustain running a mile? Like crazy challenges like that. How long could we stay up if we did that? Like, tell me how you came to the conclusion to do a Murph every day. That's a pretty big commitment.
You know, it's funny, man, how you just talked about boredom. You know, people, boredom has a bad rap.
Yep.
And you hear that phrase all the time, like, oh, boring people are bored, you know,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. I don't even know if I got that right, but
Yeah.
it's like at the same time, one of the gifts of boredom is that God will use that for creativity. Like,
Yeah.
oh, you're bored, you know? So then like our mind starts to work because we're not meant to be bored or stay in that state forever. But that's where like some of the most genius ideas come out of boredom. Some of the
Yeah.
coolest things come out of boredom. And I'm not saying I was bored out of my mind.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not saying that I was bored when all this came about, but I was in a season where I was searching, you know, I was looking. I was searching for something. I wanted something. I wanted that challenge. I wanted something different. I wanted more discipline. Um, and so my partner, business partner, Stephen Winterroad, who, by the way, is on like day 290 something. I don't know what day it is today.
Oh, wow.
He's on day 290 something. So he's right behind me. Um, he came up with the idea, called me, and was like, hey, man, what do you think about this? And see, I didn't really know Steven as, I don't know him really, really well. I know him, but I don't know him really well. We don't live in the same town.
Mm.
So he's not a business partner that I grew up with or went to college with or anything like that. So I don't know him really, really well. And I didn't know how serious he was, but he was like, hey, what about doing a Murph every day for a year? And I was just like, you know, I was like, dang, that's crazy. And I like it. You know, that's like, you're like speaking to my soul, you
Yeah.
know? So
Yeah.
there was something inside of me that started to light up. And at the same time, it was like the reality of like what level of commitment that would require started to
Yeah.
creep in. And what really truly attracted me to it wasn't necessarily like, yes, it was the challenge, but it was like, you know, we set goals not to get what you would get from achieving the goal, but to become the person that it would require to accomplish the goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Does that
Yeah.
make sense? And so
Yeah.
there's this transformation that goes along the way. And so what this challenge forged out of me was really what I was looking for. You know, the
Yeah.
confidence, the discipline, the ability to create habits, the ability to break habits, the ability to snipe down any excuses, the ability to take thoughts captive. You know, the Bible talks
Yeah.
about that all the time. Take your thoughts captive. Well, I mean, there's all kinds of gnarly things that pop up in your mind
Yeah.
that will talk you out of doing certain things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're meant to thrive. We're meant to, reach our potential. You know, we're meant to, you know, live in abundance. We're meant to
Yeah.
create wealth. We're not meant to be poor, right? So it's
Right.
like, well, there's all these things that will come against you, and it's what I call the voice of opposition. The
Yeah.
voice of opposition speaks against that and puts these thoughts into your brain that actually creates a barrier between, you know, what you think and, you know, actually doing it.
Yeah. Because Murph is one of those workouts too that's a long workout. There's a lot of time to
Mm-hmm.
think. There's a lot of
Oh
time
yeah.
for your mind to tell you you can't do it. Oh, it hurts. You didn't eat right today. Oh, you didn't get
Totally.
enough sleep last night. You don't
Like,
got this. You can't do this. Like there's a
and not
lot
only
of
that,
time.
oh man, so much time. And you actually like, if you're not focused, you lose count.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
So
know
you have
exactly
to
what
have
you mean.
systems. You have
Yeah.
to have systems in place. And so when Steven brought that to my attention in the phone call, it spoke to me. And I was like, yeah, you know, that sounds good. And I didn't think he was serious at all as far as doing it. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, no way this guy's crazy enough, you know, to do something like this, you know? And so then, you know, the other thing that I thought about is, you know, just the feeling you have. I mean, you know, if you've done a Murph before, you totally understand this and you can resonate with it. But it's like, I go back to the experiences I've had doing Murph, and it's usually like once a year, you know, and I've only been doing CrossFit. I mean, well, I don't currently do CrossFit and I'm not competing, but I did CrossFit and competed for, probably 3 years.
That was my next question. Did you have a CrossFit base? Because it seems like most people who do Murph have some type of a CrossFit base. So you felt pretty comfortable doing pull-ups and push-ups and squats and running, I would assume, in a vest
Yeah,
before
I felt
this. Yeah.
super comfortable, and you know, that was sort of my base. And so I'd go back to the experience that I've had doing Murph, and it's like every time I do it, it's hard. And I would lay down on the ground in a pool of sweat for 20 minutes. I mean,
yeah,
we could all relate to that. Like I remember, especially in the summertime, being in Kansas City or in San Diego at the end of May, it's hot. And so you're just laying down tired, you know, in a pool of sweat, just going, man, what did I just do? And so, thinking about doing that every day for an entire year, really, you know, it was intimidating.
Yeah.
It seemed really, you know, it just seemed really like a big elephant.
Yeah. I didn't know if this would be something that you maybe stumbled into. Like you were like, I'm going to do a week. And then you finished a week and you're like, I'm going to do 2 weeks. Then you finished 2 weeks and you're like, you know what? I'm going to keep going. I'm going to do a full month. And then you got to the end of a month and you're like, I think I could do more than a month, maybe a year. And like, I didn't know if it was that or if you set out with the goal of doing a year. So did you set out with the goal of doing a year and commit to do that before ever doing back-to-back days of Murph?
Yeah. I started knowing I was going to do a year.
And you had never done a back-to-back Murph. Like, so you didn't know what it was going to feel like to feel, because I mean, Murph kind of really sets in 2 days later in my experience. It's like the 2-day after effect, the, you know, delayed onset, like, you know, muscle soreness is kind of where it sets in. But you were able to just say, you know what, no matter how it feels, I'm going to go. Would you say the hardest part of it, like as far as from a tactical perspective, was hand care? Because I know that was one thing that my friend Alex ran into with the 30 days was like keeping his hands from ripping.
No, not at all. Like no. For me, I calloused over.
Oh, okay.
And I wore Bear Complex.
That's what I wore too.
The leather grips. And I did not struggle with rips at all.
Wow, that's awesome.
0. You know, like I've got calluses on my hand. Well, they've gotten a little soft. And it's time to do more pull-ups. But, yeah. So I didn't really struggle with rips at all. I still have some calluses and stuff like that, but I just wore the grips. What I noticed about the Murph 365 was the first month was probably the most physically demanding, because your body's transforming, your body's adapting, because you're actually not giving your body a choice. You're working and then you have to recover within, you know, a 12-hour period or less. And do it again. Not 24 hours. It's usually like a 12-hour period.
Yeah.
Because I would do it at night and then the next day I would do it like in the morning, or I would fit it in wherever I could. Yeah. It was a floating timeline. Yeah. It was a commitment to me that I made. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it every single day. It's non-negotiable. It has to happen. I don't care when it happens or where it happens or how I'm feeling. It has to happen. And so there were times where it would move around. So my body just was non-negotiating, had to get it done, got it done. And then your body just, because it knows, it's just, you just do it.
It also becomes a habit after, I mean, what's the kind of adage that people say is that 30 days of doing something continuously, it makes it a habit. You know, it helps create that habit loop mentally, right? Of this is something my body's a little more prepared to do this, in the sense of mentally it's a little harder of an obstacle to get over. Did you find that to be true, or did it get harder mentally as you went through?
Well, it went through phases. So I agree with that to a point. You know, habits can be created in a short period of time, but you have to continue to make the decision.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I'll give you an example. 75 hard is awesome. 75 hard is a great thing that inspires people to get out and make changes and transforms people's lives, which is fantastic. But what you decide to do on day 76 is what truly matters.
Yeah.
Day 76 is just as important as day 1, day 2, day 3, and day 75. So you did all this work to create these habits, and then you can easily undo them. So the decision you make on day 76 is just as important as any other day. So you have to think about that ahead of time. So one of the biggest things that I learned was making decisions ahead of time. So I'm going to make an example with Navy SEALs. And so I've been here in San Diego and working with SEAL Fit and some of these other organizations and being around the SEALs and doing a lot of their training. You get to know some of the things that they do, and they talk about their missions. A 4-hour mission will take 48 hours of planning and preparation. That 4-hour mission is, it's never the same. Like, it never goes according to plan.
Yeah.
There's things that come up within that mission. So it never goes according to plan, but it's always a success. Why is it a success? Well, they spend those 48 hours. Yes, they're going to talk about, where to go and what to do and things like that, but they train for all that, and they know how to shoot guns, and they know how to jump out of helicopters and all that stuff, and how to communicate and how all that stuff works. But what they don't know is some of the unknowns that could pop up. So what are some of the unknowns and some of the things that could potentially get in the way of your goal?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And when they come up, how are you going to handle them? You have to think about that ahead of time. Yeah. And it's like that with anything, whether it's business, life, relationships, any sort of a goal that you come across, it is 100% guaranteed. Problems are going to come up. Things are going to come up. They're going to get in the way. It's what we call restrainers. Restrainers come up. So you have to think about all the restrainers that could potentially come up, and then how are you going to deal with them ahead of time? So I've at this point, I've had probably 4 years of training, and maybe 15 years of training around goal setting and completion and problem solving and business planning and planning in general.
Yeah.
And scheduling. And so priority management. So I have an extensive background in all of those skills. So now it comes to a time where I have this massive, challenge in front of me. Now I get to exercise all these, and you get to think about all of these things that could potentially come up, and some of the things, every single thing that came up, I was able to work around, even things that came up last minute. Like, I had to think about, well, when this started, there's a global pandemic that happened.
Yeah.
I wasn't planning on that. Nobody was planning on that. For the first time in like human history, everybody around the world was affected by one thing. We all experienced it.
Yeah.
And we're all experiencing it now. Not one person in the planet was not affected that I know of.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure there may be some in remote areas, but so I was like, okay, what if I get COVID? What do I do?
Yeah.
What if I end up getting paralyzed? What do I do? What if I get an injury? What do I do? What if I'm incapacitated, I'm on a hospital bed and I can't walk? Like, what do I do? What if one of my arms gets chopped off? Like, I started going through all these, like, it sounds crazy, but it's like, it's that level of commitment, so you have to think of those things. Like, how bad do you want it? It's like, you can set these goals and you can set out to accomplish them, but it really just comes down to that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think the, you called them restrainers. What are some, so, I mean, obviously planning for your arm being chopped off. I think sometimes one of the cool things about CrossFit is it does kind of prepare you to say, like, preparing for the unknown. Like, that's what one of the things they talk about a lot is preparing for the unknown and unknowable. Right. There were probably some things you were thinking about, like, how do I stay hydrated? How do I handle my nutrition? How do I make sure I'm recovering well? Like, cause you were probably going to feel some things in your legs, running 2 miles a day, every day with a vest, also doing 300 air squats. You were going to feel some things in your lats and other places, shoulders, what did you go into just on the base level of, like, okay, I could cramp up in a way that would not even let me move. Like, how do I make sure did you have a regimen is what I guess I'm asking of, like, like when you came in, did you have a particular warm-up process before you hit Murph, and then like a particular cool down process and to alleviate some of those potential restrainers that could come up?
Well, I did recovery. So here's the thing. I had limited time. Time is a restrainer. Time can be a thing. And I run a business of, 5 children, married, super involved in the church and the community and a lot of things on my plate. And so it's like, well, I have to make time for these things. And so I did not devote a lot of time to warm up.
Mm-hmm.
You
have a mile run. You have a mile run to kind of get your body warm too, which is helpful.
Exactly. Yeah. Like that's the way I looked at it. I'm like, I'm running, I'm doing pull-ups, push-ups, and air squats. Like, it's kind of in my sense, I don't feel like the movements are that hard. Mm-hmm. What's more physically, I didn't feel like it was that hard. It was more mental than anything. And so for me, warm-ups like included getting, and I was taught this by a mobility coach. She's like, listen, if you don't have time to warm up, you can actually think about warming up, and it will tell and this probably goes against all CrossFit coaches will probably listen to this and be like, that's not true. Don't do that. Well, a lot of what I've heard
I'm a CrossFit coach, and I'm going to listen to the guy who did 365 reps in a row.
Dude, because here's the thing, like a lot of conventional wisdom says totally different than what I did.
Sure.
Oftentimes when records are set and when you do the unthinkable and the impossible, people are just like, that's not possible. How could you do that? That's not healthy. It's not good for you.
Yeah.
Until it actually gets done. Right. And then, I feel healthy. So what she taught me was you can actually think about activating your glutes, and because you think it, you're sending signals to that area.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And same thing with like in breathing patterns. If I need to breathe deeper because I'm wearing, I think I actually made a post about this, but like what happened with the vest, it's like a lot of what's really uncomfortable about the vest and running is like it goes all over the place. Mm-hmm. And so I can't run fast when it's jumping all over the place. So I tighten it up. Well, when I tighten it up, I can't breathe well. Yep. So then you have to breathe differently. You have to actually think about filling your full lungs and the whole cylinder all the way down to the bottom. And when you think about it, it actually starts to happen.
Yeah.
So that's what
that's where the mind, like you said, the mindset's so important because it's crazy when you look at athletes who really are mentally focused and even the placebo effect of telling yourself, I'm breathing in more air. Whether you actually are or aren't, just telling your mind you're breathing in more air can actually relieve the stress on your system. There's like studies that have even shown just telling yourself that this way of breathing is better, even if it's not, will actually convince yourself. Like your mind has so much power over what you allow your like self to think you're capable of, like, which is wild. I mean, I think it's pretty crazy to think like that you can not lie to yourself, but you can tell yourself this is helping me. Right. And maybe that was helping you. I mean, I do think like if you tell someone not to think about pink elephants, the first thing that's going to pop in their mind is pink elephants. If you tell me not to activate my glutes, the first thing I'm going to do is like tighten my glutes. Like, does that make sense? So like if I'm telling myself while I'm running in that first mile, okay, activate your glutes. All right. Like, you know what I mean? Think about that. Like that's a good cue to think about, like if you have to warm up that way. Cause were you finishing most in under an hour? Is that where like, what was your time? Totally. Time for most, like what, 45 to 50 minutes?
45 to 50 minutes on average, because I'm not like sprinting every single one,
because that would wreck you if you sprinted it, but you don't want to go too slow because you got that time,
Yeah, that's like running sprints every day, even sprinters don't sprint every single day.
Yeah. Did you partition it different each time, or did you do the partitioning the same way?
Stayed the same the entire time.
What?
Yeah.
So there was no so you just went straight through.
I tried one time varying it, and I was just like, that's too much. I was like, I'm going to stick with the same, because you create these patterns.
Yeah.
This is one of the things that I learned is that, repetition is the mother of all skill, until it becomes conditioned. And once you're conditioned, it's just automatic and you're just like doing it and in it. And it's like literally it's so automatic to where today, if we just sat here for 15 minutes, I could literally visualize the running. Like I've gone the same route so many times. I can visualize the route, the running route. I can visualize where I would do the pull-ups. I can visualize every single set and every repetition, so that's the power of, repetition is you can start to visualize it. And the visualization tool is super important too, just as an athlete.
Yeah. So you did it straight through each time. You did 100 pull-ups, then into 200 push-ups, and then into 300 air squats for them.
Well, I would do the 5, 10, 15.
Oh, 5, 10, 15. So that was
and
your,
then I'd
so
cycle it through 20 sets.
Yep. So you partitioned it that way. You partitioned it 5, 10, 15. Okay, cool.
Every time. Yeah.
I thought you were saying you went straight through like from the top. I'm like, oh man, that's a different beast when you don't give yourself the time to like recover for a pull from, because part of that, like 5, 10, 15, or even I did the 3, 6, 9 a few times, but that got really crazy. The 3, 6, 9 got really crazy because it's like 33 rounds and you get like halfway done and you're like, I just feel so spent, because you can move faster with 3, 6, 9, but you also are like wrecked more at that point halfway. Whereas like I actually I either preferred the 5, 10, 15 or the 4, 8, 12. I don't know. We played around with a bunch of different like schemes. Every time we would do it different. But you're right. I think if I was to do it for a long period of time, keeping the same version or finding a version that like I felt comfortable in, as comfortable as you can be doing Murph, you know what I mean? Like it would help me know I can keep this pace. I've done it before. This is a pace I can hold. Like you gain more confidence as you go, right? With those things.
Absolutely. And then, the more you do something, the more natural it becomes, like breathing.
Yeah.
Like think of all the things that you've done every single day, your entire life. What are some of those things, like eating and drinking, breathing, obviously opening your eyes, blinking, using the restroom, sleeping, those kinds of things. It's so natural to you. Yeah. And so that's the power of repetition, is it just becomes natural. So, the cool thing about this is, yes, it's about working out. But in the beginning, I was very attracted to, the type of man I would become to accomplish such a thing and to do such a thing. So now it's like I've been able to take this, 1 to 2 hour block of time. I always blocked off 2 hours because it's like getting my stuff on, getting outside, doing it, and then coming back, showering and getting ready for the day. Right. That was all like together, because I wouldn't like put this smelly, it's kind of funny, but I wouldn't put this smelly vest on and like then just change my clothes and go to work.
Yeah.
Or like change my clothes and hang out.
Yeah.
Like I would shower because, there wasn't one time where I didn't sweat.
Yeah.
So, I had this block of time. Well, now that block of time, it's like, well, now I can devote that to the highest value target of whatever needs to be done, whether that's, focusing on my relationship with my wife, focusing on strengthening my relationship with my kids, reading books, journaling, writing a book, doing a project within a business, whatever it might be. And I think that's the encouragement that other people can have through this is, there's things in our lives that we can devote time to every single day. And this is the other thing that I learned. We as people have the ability to be, do, or have anything that we desire in our life with a little bit of daily work. And that's a real statement. That's a real thing. You literally, especially in this country, live in America. Like this is the best environment to be in. It's a free environment, free country, with tons of opportunity, regardless of what is going on recently within the last year. It still is, America founded on awesome principles that allow people to do things. So you could literally be, do, or have anything with a little bit of daily work.
When you were in that, what was the hardest day for you? Do you remember like down to the number, the exact hardest day, or even maybe season or week? Was there any moment where you were like really sick, or where there was just like obstacles in life? Like obviously coronavirus is happening in the middle of all of this, but I
got COVID.
You did get
Christmas
COVID.
Eve. Yeah. Christmas Eve. And
what day was that? What day was that in the
300 something.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I had COVID
on 300 and something. Oh my God.
Yeah. And so it was, I'm looking it up now, day 300 and like 307 or 308.
Okay. Yeah. And were you were obviously able to work through that. How was that? like, were you pretty asymptomatic in the sense of like, it didn't really affect you, or did you feel
Oh
pretty
no, it
clean?
affected me. So what happened was we're at a friend's house, and it's like I just started feeling tired, and I'm like, babe, we gotta go. Like we gotta go. Like we can't stay
Mm-hmm.
here anymore. We have to leave. I feel terrible.
Mm-hmm.
I had already done the Murph. I believe I did it that morning.
You have it all logged in your like calendar or something, or like somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, I wore a Garmin, so I'd have to look at the
Oh,
actual
wow.
timing of it. Yeah, so everything was logged.
That's
Um,
awesome.
so I think I did it that morning, and then that afternoon and evening, we're at a friend's house, and I just started feeling tired. I'm like, man, get me out of here. So we went home, and then the next day on Christmas, I woke up and I had this massive fever. Was just sweating like crazy. It was like 103-degree fever, sweating like crazy, and just it was another terrible thing. Um, that happened. I think the fever actually, because on Christmas Day I filmed myself um, doing the Murph,
Mm.
because I'm like, number one, people may not believe me. Number two, I have something to say about this, because part of it's like every single excuse you could think of. It's like I'm
Mm-hmm.
shooting it down.
Mm.
I'm shooting it down.
Yeah.
And I had to think about this ahead of time, because I knew once the pandemic happened, there's a possibility I could get COVID. What am I going to do if I get COVID? Well,
Mm-hmm.
the natural answer for me was, well, I'm just going to continue on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to continue on. I committed to this, this is the goal. I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And so when it happened, I already knew what I was going to do. And so I went out and did it. Did like a 2-minute, clip of what I was going to say, and it was just, I think it was along the lines of like, no matter if you're sick or whatever you're feeling, it doesn't matter. If you're committed to something, you can still accomplish it.
Mm.
It
Wow.
doesn't matter. You can work
So
through it.
was Christmas Day the hardest day of that like being initially kind of like,
It wasn't the hardest day. It was hard.
it was hard?
Like I'm used to, like, I'm okay with dealing with pain and things that are
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable.
Well, my guess
I'm
would
okay.
be you must be if you did 365 days
Yeah, I
of Murph.
mean,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
like physical pain and going through like discomfort and things like that, I'm used to and I'm okay with.
Mm-hmm.
Things that are tough for me was like schedule changes
Mm.
and having to. I'll give you an example. I made the decision one Sunday to do my Murph late. I woke up in the morning. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do it late. And I had a great day with my family. We were just, enjoying each other's time. I was giving myself an extra 3 hours of recovery. Every hour matters, when
Mm-hmm.
you're doing this. So made a decision to give myself a couple hours of recovery. And through that, I fell asleep watching a movie.
Mm.
And I was just really tired. I was on a
Yeah.
full stomach. We had a great meal, great dinner, full stomach. My body was full. I had some sugar, like, some birthday cake. I bet it was probably on my daughter's birthday or someone's
Mm-hmm.
birthday we were celebrating or something like that. And we just, woke up from the movie and I was super tired. And I'm like, dang, man, I got to go do a Murph. This sucks.
So is that the closest you came to like getting through a day where maybe you weren't going to do one? Like, would you say that was the closest call, or like, did you have a close call on any of these days where it was like, oh crap, that meeting went long and I got like 2 hours to get this in before clock strikes midnight, or like what was like the closest for you? Was it that one or another one?
No, I had one over the summer where I had to get back. So I was flying.
Oh, wow.
I think I was was this when I was in Texas? So I flew to, I don't remember exactly where I was going. I'll have to look it up.
That's fine.
But yeah, I'd come back from Texas or from a trip and my flight was getting in late. Flight was delayed coming back. So I'm like, wow. Great. Like delay, like I know when I'm sitting at the airport and I take my vest everywhere I go. So I'm like, great. I know what this means. This means that it's one more hour extended, And so I land at 9 or 10, and I live like 45 minutes to an hour from the airport. So I have to drive. And then as soon as I walk in the door after
Put
a
your
long
vest on.
flight, it's like throw my vest on and run out the door, And so then it's like, I get in at like 11:30 from doing the Murph. And it's like, it's not like I'm feeling like all chipper and stuff afterwards. So, I hop in the hot bath, which is something that I like to do for recovery, is like hottest water I could actually sit in. Sit in it for a half hour, sweat like crazy, get out, and then that just I can sleep pretty well after that.
Wow. How many Murphs did you do away from home if you were traveling? You don't have to give me an exact number. Was it like 7 to 10, or what are we looking at?
Maybe like 2 dozen.
2 dozen. Wow. So that's interesting, because then you got to like secure a pull-up bar, and like there's some challenges there. I guess if you have a CrossFit box that you can get into in the area you're going to, or someone that has.
Yeah, it's a pandemic, man. So all the CrossFit boxes were closed.
Yeah, that's the struggle. Yeah.
So it was like, all right, well, what do I do? Well, I'd go look for like local playgrounds.
Yeah.
And so I would look for an Airbnb or a hotel that was like right next to a local playground. And so then I'd run around, and I'd take my vest with me. And the other thing is, one thing I wasn't planning on was like LAX, the airport LAX. Here's what's crazy is, when I was flying to Texas, this is back in June, the flight, literally I show up to, it wasn't San Diego airport, it was Orange County. So I go to Orange County, and this is where like I almost lost, I almost missed. So I go to Orange County to fly to Dallas. Well, the flight, we get on the plane, we board, and then they're like, oh, there's a mechanical issue. We're going to have to deplane. So we get off the plane. And at this point, my vest, I believe, was checked. And so I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, oh, crap. So it was checked. So then we get off the plane, and then they're like, listen, we can't guarantee that this plane is going to be fixed in time for you to leave. So we have to bring in a new plane, and we can't guarantee we have a spare plane. So in other words, all flights are canceled. And I'm like, oh, freaking great. I got to get to Texas. I have a business meeting I'm supposed to be at tomorrow morning. Or no, actually it was that day. That day there was a business. I was supposed to, like, everything was logistically planned.
Yeah.
So I would land, and then I'd get there, and then the business meeting would start. And so then it was like, I had to get my luggage, go to LAX, and I rebooked a flight to get out and still get there, but I would get there late. And so then what ended up happening was, because I checked the baggage and I had that close call, I was like, I'm just going to wear the vest. I'm going to take it with me. And so LAX was like, no, you can't take this with you. This is a weapon. Oh. They were considering the tactical vest with the rogue. So I have these the rogue plates, dude.
Yeah. I have the same one. That's so.
They're like, this is a weapon. You could use this as a blunt force object. And I'm like,
they are pretty strong, but at the same time, that's.
I'm like, dude. At this point, I'm like, I've flown out of 5 or 6 different airports. Nobody has told me this, so you can't tell me this is a security. And so then we're just going back and forth, trading words, and then finally the manager comes down, and he's like, listen, you can take this with you, but you have to check it. And I'm like, all right, cool.
Oh my
Full
gosh.
send. Like I trust you guys.
And so you ended up getting it in that day when you got to Texas then?
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. Jeez. I'm sure there was a lot of there's a ton in your control in those situations, but when you're also like traveling and stuff, that really challenges, some of the possibilities that it could go the wrong direction. That's pretty amazing. That story is pretty awesome. What would you say? Obviously, you spoke about serving in your church, and you're a spiritual person. Would you call this in some ways a spiritual practice? I know even for me, I was doing Murphs on Sundays for a while. And for me, it was also this time of just being alone. You're kind of by yourself. I don't know. not to get all preachy or spiritual in the sense of like, I'm sure people can relate to the story that aren't, but I guess I'm saying like, one of the things I find interesting about the story of Jesus is the retreating to be alone. Like, you know what I mean? And some of what I think is interesting about an hour long, you know, Murph is like, there is this like sense of like a spiritual practice of being alone and like doing something. And it became for me at least like almost a meditative, prayerful practice of like you're running and you're just, you know, for me, I had music, but it was still like, I'm alone with my thoughts. I'm praying. I'm like, you know, tell me a little bit about how that was for you and what you learned about yourself or your, you know, spiritually, how you grew even going through that.
Oh man, so good. I love this. I love this topic. So one of the things I started to do is I started to read the Bible more. You know, like God's like, okay, well, you can set aside all this time to get physically fit and sharpen your body. But what about our relationship? Are you carving out time for me? And so I started to carve out more time to read the Bible. And one of the things that I saw in the Bible, you're absolutely right. Like I just noticed, and I'm new, like I'm new to the Bible. I'm new to, well, not new, but new understanding. You know, I grew up Catholic and I went to private school most of my life, went to private college and, you know, so religion has been part of my life. You know, God has been part of my life. Jesus has been in my life. The Bible has been in my life, but I didn't really understand that explanation of it and that view or translation of it, if you would. So, this has really helped me understand God in a totally different way because I hear his voice more. And one of the things that I saw in the Bible and reading was like, you're absolutely right. Jesus would retreat and he'd go off in the mountains or he'd go off and pray or go off in solitude and meditate or whatever.
Yeah.
And he would come back and some of the greatest miracles in the Bible would happen after that. Seriously. And he would invite his disciples or apostles or whatever. He'd invite these men to go with him. And some of the greatest miracles would happen after that.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really think about that until afterward. I'm like,
what's interesting too is like people didn't understand it. Like, why are you leaving? Why are you going out? Why are you doing this? Like this was a practice that was really important. This was a practice that was really important. And I think that's, there's probably a ton of connection there to like ways to connect that or analogies that you could probably use from your experience to connect people to just spiritual practices in general. Like it doesn't have to be that you're out doing a Murph, but just the value of a spiritual practice that you legitimately take the time for daily.
Well, what I would do is I would mix the two, right?
Okay.
So, you know, initially in the very beginning, you know, gyms were open and I go to the gym, I do the Murph or whatever, and then gyms closed and I would just do the Murph around the neighborhood. And it saved me time. Like I don't have to get in the car and drive to the gym.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have to like get all distracted by all the people there. It's like I can just get in, get my stuff done and move, you know, and get it done. So it started to change. Like there's this transformation that started to happen and little by little, God started showing up more in my life. And, you know, I would start listening to different books, you know, listen to books and then I'd listen to podcasts. And then I, you know, sometimes I wouldn't listen to anything at all and I'd just be silent. And I would just, you know, pray or I would think, you know, and just get all these things that I'm thinking about, thought about, you know what I mean? Because sometimes you have all these things on your mind and you just need time to think, you know, and sort through things and think about what you're thinking about, if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense because we have so many distractions in our world, right? Like,
dude,
you can't be distracted in a Murph in the sense of like, you got a task to do and that can distract you, but you can't turn on the TV. You can't, you know, if you're go quiet through it, that's, I know exactly what you mean. You got to give your thoughts energy. Yeah.
So there were moments in time in those Murphs where, you know, my wife and I are on the worship team at our church. And so I would use that time to, and I'm totally new, like that is something totally new to my world. Like I'm, you know, it's stepping way out of my comfort zone doing that. And so that happened during this process, you know, it happened in October.
Wow.
You know, I just said, okay, I'm going to try out. And I made the team. And now I'm going through this whole orientation period, training period where, you know, I have to learn all these songs. And so I'd listen to this worship music and these songs. I'd memorize the words, and listen to different parts, and stuff like that, these songs. And so then like all of that is like, in a way that is, that's devoting time to a relationship and praising God, and then I would listen to worship music and there'd be these downloads I would get. And some days I would literally just get wrecked because I would hear certain things of, I would just hear God's voice, and how proud of me he was. And, he would show me different things of how he blessed me in my life. He would show me how he was moving in my life, and I would start to see things in a different way. My relationship with my wife just got better and better and better. Leadership in my family, took spiritual authority over my house, and just all these beautiful things just started to unfold.
Wow. I think it's interesting that you're the type who went from audiobook to podcast to also music, and also silence. Like usually people need one or the other. I struggle to do anything like podcast or audiobook while I'm working out. Like if I'm at like a low range, like just spinning on a bike or something, I can do that. But you did all those, huh? Did you have a go-to song or playlist that if you were just like in a bad place and you were like, I got to hit this, I guess this is my pump up song that gets me through. Did you have any of those, or was it mainly just like
Queen, We Are the Champions?
Yes.
It's exactly 3 minutes. It is exactly 3 minutes. And I would put that on repeat.
Really? Repeat. Wow.
Yeah. Because it just like, I'm in the season of just repetition. Repetition is the mother of all skill, right? So it's like repeat. And it's like that just gets ingrained into my head. And like, if you really think about it, nobody else on the planet has done this as of yet. I'm the first one to do it. My partner's right behind me. Steven, he's on day 290 something.
Yeah.
So I would wake with the day I realized that I was about halfway through. I'm like, whoa, nobody else on the planet has actually really done anything like this. So I'm actually breaking world record every single day. So I'd wake up every single day, and that's like, hey dude, you're breaking a world record. So if you wake up 100 to 200 days in a row saying that same kind of thing, breaking a world record, I'm a champion. Like what do you think that does?
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Cause I think that mantra of like, I'm a champion, like I'm getting this done. I'm checking this box. This is going to be mine. Like that's a pretty huge. Yeah. So when that song comes on now, do you just want to do pull-ups and like air squats? Like that song comes on, you're gonna be like out at like Chipotle, and it's gonna come on over the radio, and you're just gonna like drop into an air squat. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
It's gonna be so ingrained in you that like We Are the Champions comes on, and you just like drop.
Yeah, that's Pavlov for you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your business. Like you talked a little bit about this. I saw on Instagram, it's Leaders Next Door. Is that the business? Is that what you were referencing when you said your business partner and what you guys are doing, or is that something different? Or tell me a little bit about.
Yeah, so that's something different. So, I started my first business when I was 20, and then about, 2008, I believe, is when I started a roofing company called Roofing 101.
Okay.
And recently, within about the last month, I made the decision to exit out. So I'm exiting out of the company 100%, selling my shares back to my partners, and then, focusing my efforts on, what the Lord wants me to do next. So that's the decision that I made. And so Steven is a partner in that business.
Gotcha.
Leaders, and that's a roofing and restoration company with a couple of different locations. Leaders Next Door was actually born out of the pandemic. And it's what's really funny about in the beginning we were talking about boredom and how creativity is born in boredom. Well, when the pandemic happened, it's like schools get shut down. My kids are at home. We're all forced to like homeschool our kids in a way. Yes, there's like Zoom and like virtual stuff and whatever, but we have to be there to monitor. Otherwise, it's like, what are they doing? So my kids, like, they're getting done with school in like an hour and a half, 2 hours, because it's all self-paced. In the very beginning, it was self-paced. So this happened in March. We still have March, April, May, and a little part of June. So 3.5 months of school running this way. And in the very beginning, it's like, we'll let them watch movies and hang out and chill and just kind of transition into this. And after about 2 or 3 weeks of just being easy and transitioning, I was like, I do not want this to be a habit for my children.
Mm-hmm.
They are not going to be like, iPad zombies,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I was like, what can I do? So as an entrepreneur, I'm like, well, I started my first business when I was 20, and that changed my life. So I can just teach them exactly what I did, but make it simpler so that they'll understand it. So the whole idea was, I want to teach kids how to make money in the neighborhood. And then once they make money, what do you do with it? I want to teach them the responsibility of giving. I want generosity, which is huge. So how can I inspire $1 billion in generosity over my lifetime? We'll teach children what to do with money when they earn it. It's a lot harder to teach an adult what to do with money, as you know, probably as a pastor.
Yeah.
And then you can ingrain the idea of tithing. So we teach kids about giving, generosity, about tithing, saving, and spending, and also setting goals. Like, you want a goal to buy, an electric bike that costs $2,000. Okay, well, what do you have to do to accomplish that? Let's break it down over the course of 20 weeks. What kind of work do you need to do to make that money? And then, when you make it, how much are you going to save? How much are you going to give? And how much are you going to tithe, and all that kind of stuff? So you build all that in. And then along the way, I'm like, this is a great opportunity to redefine what leadership is, because all these kids that live in my neighborhood, I have 50 some odd kids that live on my street.
Wow.
And so they're always out on their bikes and their skateboards. And I'm like, man, these are like our future politicians. These are our future educators. These are our future leaders, first responders, folks in the military. Like, this is the future of our country right here. The city is right here, like on the street. And who's teaching them? Right now they're being taught online, kind of, And so, well, why don't I create a program that teaches them the basics of leadership and using business as an example?
That's awesome.
So that's what the program is. And so really it's all about shaping future leaders of this country.
Very cool. Very, very cool. What do you hope people take out of you doing 365 days of Murph? Like, if you could, obviously, I think as your name gets out there more and more people hear this story, they're going to be inspired in different ways. But what's your hope that people would take away from your, it's pretty inspiring. I'm not going to lie that you did 365 Murphs in a day makes me want to just go do a Murph right now. And I don't really want to go do a Murph right now, but like, just talking to you makes me want to go do a Murph, because I'm like, wow, that's awesome. But I also have a very challenge-based mindset. I'm the type who thinks about, let's do a challenge. What can we do in an A to B kind of point of like, let's just go do this. But I guess like as you were going through this, or even as you decided to do this, what was the hope? Obviously you did it for yourself. I'm not trying to say you did it with the intention of necessarily just like inspiring other people. I think that's an outcome of it. But I guess I'm saying, like, what are some of the ways you've seen it inspire people? And what are some of the things you're hopeful that this story and this experience you've went through can impact other people?
Yeah. So one of the things that I've learned and that I'd like to share with everyone, there's a couple things that I'll dive into real quick. Inspiration is very temporary. It's an emotion that lasts for just a little bit of time. Pain is temporary. The pain that I experienced and endured was temporary. It only lasts for so long. There are cycles that my body went through. There were times where I was super inflamed, times where I couldn't sleep. And then there were times where I slept like a baby and slept like a rock. There's no problem, no inflammation, no pain whatsoever. And so the boredom phase, that was temporary, and so there's all these different things, and even discipline. It's like people talk about discipline. Oh man, you're so disciplined. Well, that's temporary. All of those things are temporary. And so essentially, like, what I would want people to take away is, when you feel disciplined and when you're in that moment of feeling and being disciplined, use that to your advantage as much as possible to get to the next phase, to use it as a bridge to accomplish something. Use the inspiration to get started, because you're only going to be inspired for so long. So as soon as you're motivated, you feel inspired, and you've got a goal in mind, you have to take action towards that goal. You have to. Otherwise, what happens is the gap between you getting started and when you felt that inspiration just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And the probability of you dropping off and falling away from that goal just goes up. So you have to take action on it, and know that, like, when you're going through dark moments, when you're going through pain, when you're going through some sort of suffering, it's only temporary. We're not meant to suffer. Jesus Christ died on the cross for us, for suffering. So we're not, he already did all the suffering for us. So we're not meant to. So we're not meant, that's why it's all temporary. That part is temporary. You're just going through a period of time and a season, but you can use that as a bridge to the next thing. Discipline is a bridge between something you think about and something you do. So I guess my number one goal is I would like for people to start to interrogate and start to question the different excuses and different things that pop up, the different restrainers, the things that get in the way of their goals. Start to question those. Yeah. And really take that captive. Yeah. And understand where it comes from and understand how to get around it.
That's good. That's good. I look back at, like, even when my friend Alex did 30 and I was going to do 30 with him, and then, like, the time restraint became an issue. I didn't really have a plan going in. Like, I was like, first of all, I didn't know for sure that I was going to do 30. I'm like, I'll just do it with you, whatever. It wasn't like a huge thing, but I didn't plan on, oh, wow, this is taking like 2 to 2.5 hours of my day every day, driving to the gym, getting warmed up, going out. And then afterwards, and it would be like, how it is when you go to the gym, someone talks to you, you get in a conversation, 20 minutes later, you start, and I didn't create the intention. Does that make sense? Of, like, saying, okay, I can't get in a conversation because I have a task to complete here. I can say hi. Yeah. I can say I got to get going and move on. Like, I didn't guard my time with the intention of saying there's a restrainer here and I have to avoid it. Not that person's not important, but just to say I have to avoid some of these restrainers. And I think had I done that, that would have been an easier task to accomplish in a smaller window of time, where I could have also valued the other things I had to value on my list. But I think I learned a lot through that, from the standpoint of, like, okay, if I'm going to do something, I have to evaluate beforehand, like, how I'm going to even approach that task and keep it in the window of time that I'm able to do it in. And that's, even when I was listening to you talk, I was like, it's interesting how you even recognize, like, okay, I know the window of time I have to get this done, and I have to get it done in that window of time because I've got kids, I've got a wife, I've got a job, I've got, and I hadn't done all those calculations ahead of time, but had I would have had to be a lot more disciplined to get it done. And I think that's where, when you say, like, get that action plan in place, right? When you have that idea or that goal or that thing you want to do, it's also like, get that action plan for how you're going to deal with some of those obvious restrainers that are going to come. Because if you don't, they'll be the first thing to kind of knock you off course, at least.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I shaved my head, and I figured out how to take a shower in 5 minutes.
Really?
And, because I'm like putting the hair gel in my hair or whatever, and like doing my hair or what, like, I was just like, it takes too much time. So I'm just going to shave my head. And so I shaved my head, and I kept my head shaved. And it was just like, that allowed me to move fast. And if I had to drive to a gym every day to do this, that's adding an extra 30 to 45 minutes, maybe even an hour of wasted time, in my opinion. Wasted time. And so I'm like, I don't have that extra hour. And then I could take the extra, 5 to 15 minutes of self-care that I would normally put in, like, hair and, like, messing with a beard or, looking in the mirror, and I just shave my head. I know what my face looks like. I know what my head looks like. I don't have to mess with it anymore. You know what I mean? So that's awesome. Kind of like, that was my mentality. And so, and it worked because my schedule was so tight. I just went from the next to the next to the next, and it worked.
That's amazing. Wow. Well, if people want to follow you, learn more about you, I'm obviously following you on Instagram. Do you want to tell people where they can follow you, or if they want to follow up with you? leadersnextdoor.com is something you're promoting on your Instagram, but any other ways that they can connect with you, or ways that you'd want them to connect with you?
Yeah, I would say Instagram is a big one. It's Graham, GRAHAM, Desert, DESSERT. And so you can find me there. There's nobody else in the entire world that has my name. I can guarantee you that. So I'm pretty easy to find. So Instagram would be a spot. Facebook would be a spot. LinkedIn would be a spot. And you can look us up. You can check out leadersnextdoor.com as well for your kids if that's something that you're into. And that's probably the biggest thing. Yeah. There'll be more things that come out. Like I'll have some books that come out here soon. That's
awesome. Graham, thank you so much for taking some time to be on Beyond Boundaries today. It's been pretty amazing getting to know you and hear your story. And I think there's a lot that is going to come of this, in the sense of like just opening up a lot of belief that other people can do really hard things, because at least the inspiration, I know that you say it's temporary, but it is something that can push people, over the hill, to just push to say, okay, I can do this. I can try this. I can actually give myself to this idea. And I think we need that inspiration. The inspiration doesn't get us, over the finish line, but it can get us started. And I think your story is definitely going to push a lot of people. For some people, it's going to push them just to get off the couch and get active, or for other people, it's going to push them to say, this idea I've been sitting on, I'm ready to actually activate it and do it. And like, I just think it's such a cool story. And I'm thankful for you coming and sharing it here.
That's amazing, man. It's such an honor. And I hope that this story basically inspires people and just shows them that, hey, there's a door over here that's for you to open. I can't open it for you, but it's a door that you can open. And when you open it, you're going to step into a world that is like so colorful and so bright and so much better than you could ever imagine. And so I just hope that people see that door, and I hope they actually open it and step through.
Thanks, Graham.
You got it.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Beyond Boundaries podcast. Thanks to Graham Desert for being with me on this podcast today. All of Graham's links are in the description. Make sure to give him a follow on Instagram, and who knows, maybe even tag him next time you do Murph. Again, you can find the show notes for this episode and others on PastorJustinDouglas.com. You can support the show at our Patreon. Any and all support is so appreciated. The link for the Patreon is in the podcast description and in the show notes. May you go and live a life that is beyond boundaries, giving others love, exploring new ideas, and championing belonging.